Town centre, 1 to 4 players, mix of economic city building game and spatial puzzle. A lot more to take in this one, much more than you might think looking at the box. So let's go straight over to the overview and I'll give some few thoughts at the end.
So here is the final stages of setup for a 2-player game of Town Centre. Each player will have a board on which they will place the buildings that will form their city. These cubes are the buildings. Each colour represents a different type of building, and we will place those into this bag, with any remaining cubes forming part of the supply. Each player will also have one purple building which they can place anywhere within their city. And finally, players will take 2 small cubes in their colour. One will remain on the player board to signify their colour, and the other will go on the $3 space on the scoring track. This central board acts as both a player aid and as a scoring track from which you will calculate scores and income each turn. Within Town Centre there are a number of important concepts to digest before you can start playing the game. The first and possibly the most important is what each of the blocks represent and how they interact with each other. The purple cube is the town hall, and this is given to each player for free at the start of the game. Each turn, during the income phase, it will give you $1. It is also a type of office. Offices are red. These are the only block in the game that cost money to buy. However, in combination, they will affect the growth of your city and ultimately your scoring as a result of that growth, which we'll get back to later. Black has a dual function. This is a parking lot when it is a single cube like so. However, if you have 2 stacked on top of the other like that, that becomes an elevator. As a parking lot, it generates income based on the buildings that are around it. As an elevator, it stops generating income but does allow you to build to a higher level than you were at previously. Yellow is the utility buildings. These provide power to the other buildings in the city, most notably black, blue and green. An elevator that is powered would allow you to build. Without the power, you cannot build from an elevator. Yellow utility buildings in combination with blue will help you generate income throughout the turn through what's called the tax phase. And yellow in combination with green will be the source of points, and points are the means by which you win the game. Blue is a commercial building. On its own it doesn't do anything, but in combination with yellow it does generate income. And it generates income through the number of green buildings surrounding it, so that it will grow, and I'll come back to that a bit later on as well. Equally, green, which is residential, will grow. However, green grows based on the number of office buildings around it. Another very important concept within Town Centre is that of adjacency. In Town Centre, adjacency is orthogonal, so here and here. It's also vertical. However, it is not diagonal. So in this example, all three green buildings are adjacent, however this blue building is not. And that's very important when it comes to things such as parking. For example, the blue building in this instance will generate income through the parking, however this green building will not. The third key concept within town centre is the difference between a cube and a unit. This single building is a cube, or these single buildings are cubes. However, if you put two cubes of the same colour so that they are adjacent, they become what's called a unit. So in this example, we have two cubes and one unit. If we were to move this green cube and place it on top of the other two green cubes, we would have one green unit of three cubes plus one cube that is blue. And that's very important when it comes to determining how your city is going to grow during the growth phase of the game. A game of Town Centre lasts for a total of 10 rounds. Each round has 5 phases. The first round is the draft phase, or the investment phase, and this is a draft, and you'll take from the bag a number of cubes that is twice the total number of players. So in a 2-player game, you would draw 4 cubes from the bag. If on the very first round only one of these cubes is red, you will need to place it back in the bag because players cannot afford to buy offices at this point in the game. From round 2 onwards, any offices that are drawn that cannot be paid for are placed to one side and are no longer available in the game for purchase. Having drawn the cubes from the bag, the first player will then place cubes one on top of the other, like so, and a draft will begin, with each player taking a cube from one of the towers until such time as there are no cubes left. And then we move to the construction phase, and there are a certain number of rules around the construction which I'll go into now. There are some certain number of construction rules for town centre, and the first one is that these squares around the outside are referred to as suburbs. They are a negative point value, and you can never build higher than 1 cube should you find yourself placing a cube in there. So 2 is not allowed. Certain cubes cannot be placed adjacent to one another. For example, 2 green cubes cannot be placed next to each other during the construction phase. However, it is okay to place them non-adjacent, and don't forget that non-adjacent does include at a diagonal at different heights, and it could even include a situation like that. Blue buildings can also not be placed adjacent to each other. However, they can also be placed at a diagonal or elsewhere on the board, so long as they are not adjacent. That is adjacent. Black cubes can be placed anywhere. However, when it comes to stacking of cubes, only black cubes can be placed on top of black cubes. You cannot place any other colour on top of a black cube. Once the construction is complete, we move to the growth phase. The growth or development phase of town centre works a little bit like this. The first growth criteria is for offices, which are the red and purple cubes next to residential. And if the number of cubes in a green unit is less than the number of office cubes it is adjacent to, it will grow until the number of cubes in each green unit matches the number of office cubes it is next to. So in this circumstance, this cube here will grow in this direction, potentially, or this direction if you had no other choice. And this cube would be added here, or maybe added here, to grow this cube. Growth is mandatory, so if you're in an unfortunate position where you had to grow a cube and you could not grow up and you could not grow orthogonally within the 9 central squares, you would have to grow out into the suburbs for negative points. The second part of the growth phase in town centre is the development of the blue buildings. Where the green buildings were cubes against cubes leading to growth, here it is units against cubes leading to growth. So a unit, remember, is multiples of the same colour together. And in this particular part of the phase, it is the blue cubes that grow based on how many green residential units they are adjacent to. So this is a cube and the number of cubes are equal, so that will not grow. However, the blue unit here is adjacent to 2 residential units, so that will grow until there are the same number of cubes in the blue commercial building as there are total number of units. One final example of how growth works in a more complex city is this here, and we have a unit that is next to 2 office cubes, so it does not grow. However, this green unit is adjacent to 3 cubes, so even though they are different heights, the cubes, there are only 2 cubes in this unit. However, there are 3 offices, and so this one will grow. And the only place it can currently grow because of the height restriction is here. And that now has turned 2 cube units of green residential cubes into 1 5 cube green residential unit. The fourth phase of town centre is the tax revenue phase, and this is where your town generates income. There are a few different ways of generating income, each with its own slightly unique way of working. The City Hall cube, the purple cube, will always generate $1. The commercial district will score based on whether it is powered, which means it has a yellow cube adjacent to it somewhere, and the size in terms of total number of cubes and height of the district. So in this particular instance, the commercial area is powered, which means it will generate income. And then we need to cross-reference its 2 cube size with its 2 cube height, and it will generate $4 for that particular unit. And over time, what will happen is as your city gets higher and your units get more complex and bigger, they will generate more and more income each time the scoring phase happens. The third way to generate income is to generate it through parking. Now, parking will be generated by your black cubes, and in this instance, although we've got 3 black cubes, only this one will generate any income, and it will generate $1 per orthogonally adjacent cube. Black cubes that are part of an elevator will not score any, will not generate any income once they go higher than 1 cube high. The final phase in a round of town centre is the public works phase, and this is where you have the option of spending some income to improve your utilities and parking and elevators. Each time you do this, you pay $5 plus $5 for each available cube of the type you're purchasing. For example, the first cube would be $5, the second cube would be $10, and the third cube would be $15, and so on. In a game of town centre, the maximum height is 5 cubes high. So the most you will pay for your final and fifth and final black cube is $25. This is also true for utilities. You pay 5 for the first one, and then 5 plus another 5 per cube. So here you'd have to pay 10 for that second cube. At the end of the 10th round of Town Centre, the final scoring happens, and there are a few factors to consider. The first is that you get a point for each $5 you have on this track. You then need to score for the height and size of the residential buildings as you would do for the income generated from the blue buildings. So in this example we have a height of 3 with 4 cubes, so that's a height of 3, size of 4. So we should generate 13 points. However, it is not powered, and therefore it does not score any points. If we were to have had a utility cube here, it is now adjacent to the second cube in that green unit, and therefore the whole unit is powered, and we do score the 13 points. Now, the height can be scored regardless of how many cubes are in your unit. So here, for example, we have a green cube powered by this yellow utility building. And so in that example, we will have a size of 1 and a height of 4, which means that 1 cube will generate 7 points. Once you've added up all your points and you've taken away any points for buildings in the suburbs, so it's -1 for each cube in the suburbs, here is -3, the overall victor is the person with the highest number of points. There's a lot to take in with Town Centre the first few times you play it, and sometimes the best way to take in all the different nuances of the game is to watch a few rounds being played. And so that's what I'll do now. I've got the game set up for 2 players. Both players do have their city hall in the location that they choose. The player markers are on the 3 income space, and we're about to start the first of 10 rounds. So the first thing we do is the investment phase, and this is where we draw cubes out of the bag. That is twice the number of players. So in a 2-player game we draw 4 cubes. Now I've noticed I've drawn a red cube, and as this is the first round we have to return that to the bag as we cannot afford to pay for it. I mean, draw a replacement. The first player, in this case the orange player, then chooses what order they wish to stack the cubes in, like so. Then, again starting with the first player, each person takes cubes from the top of the stacks until there are no more cubes remaining. And then we move to the construction phase, which is phase 2. And then simultaneously all the players will add cubes to their player board, to their city. So I think the orange player will place like so, because the income generation possibilities of the parking. However, the blue player will place like this to ensure that there is power to a residential unit and potential for growth. Having said that, let's put it like that. Although there's no power to that residential unit now, there will be more room to grow, and at this point that is probably useful, at least until we have a higher building limit. Then we move to the growth phase. There are no situations here where we would need to grow. There are no multiple offices around green units, and there are no blue units available, so we do miss that phase. The fourth phase is the income generation phase, and the orange player will have 1 income for the parking, for the city hall, and then 2 for the parking. The blue player, on the other hand, will only have 1 for city hall. And now we can spend our income on a public work, which is phase 5, and we can either buy an additional black cube or an additional yellow cube. Each of those costs a minimum of $5, so blue cannot do that, however orange currently can. So orange will buy 1 black cube to increase the building height in the city. That is the end of the first round, and we then move on to round number 2. On this occasion, blue takes cubes from the bag and then places them in the order that they choose to. Blue is going to place like this. And blue would like a blue cube, leaving green for orange, and then blue will take yellow, leaving just the office. Now orange has only got $1 remaining and cannot pay for that cube, that office cube, which costs $5. Therefore, it needs to be removed from the game. We move back to the placement phase. And here, I'll just do this quickly. Okay, the buildings are now legally placed inside our cities. We have the growth phase, and again, there is no growth because we do not have enough of the relevant building types. We move to income. So we have 1 income for the city hall, and then a powered commercial district of 1 cube of height of 1, so that is an additional income. The orange player has just the 1 income from the city hall, as the elevator no longer generates income once the parking becomes an elevator. We then have the option of purchasing the public works, and I think in this instance blue will now take the opportunity to buy parking. Orange cannot afford it. And we move on to round 3. The cubes are not falling well today. So orange player goes first, and we now place something like that, and we'll take that cube, and like so. Again, this cube cannot be paid for, needs to be discarded. We place growth again does not happen because we do not have enough offices or enough green cubes and offices in the right places in either city. Income is again 1 plus an additional 2. and here we have just the one. We're really not making a lot of money at the moment in this game. Nobody can afford to buy public work at this point. Move on to round number 4. Kind of hoping we get some offices come out soon that we can actually afford to pay for. Oh no. Okay. So blue is going to do the setup, and we'll set them up like that. Blue will take blue, and green. And again, this cube cannot be paid for. Moving into the construction phase. In this situation here, blue cannot. That's the only currently legal place blue can place his cubes. However, that's not going to be good for the growth phase because we can only go into the suburbs here. And green, unfortunately, can only go. Sorry, orange can only place his green cubes either here or on top of one of the other buildings. Growth then. Okay, an example of growth. Now in this example here, we don't have enough red cubes to generate any residential growth. However, we do have 2 green cubes which act as units in this circumstance to impact upon the commercial area, and the commercial area will grow, but it can only grow outwards, and at the end of the game that is going to be 1 negative point for being in the suburbs. Income, we have $1 for orange, and we have 1 for that commercial district that's powered, plus 1, 2, 3, so a total of 4 plus that one, 5 for the blue player, pushing him up to 9. I'm sure more skilled players would have a much higher score than this by now, but there you go. Okay, round number 5, and probably the last one that I will show. It's the orange player's turn to go first now. So here I think the best thing for the orange player is to get a commercial district going to generate some more income. So we'll take the blue cube and we'll place it there, hopefully to increase some growth and then have it powered from the commercial building. The blue player on the other hand really needs to get some height. The utility here now powers that building, even though it's in the suburbs. The blue still will generate income. Okay. Growth phase. The green does not grow in any area again. However, blue does grow on this orange player's board. He will grow here. He could grow upwards, but there's no point because he won't generate any income from doing that. Not at the moment. And we really need some income, which will be available through the powered cube here, and power will flow through into both buildings. So income then, both players gain 1 for the city hall, and the commercial district is a height of 1 with a size of 2, so that's 3 for blue, and now on 13, and the same here, now on 9. I don't think either player is going to buy public work at the moment, and let's just do one more round in the hope that we can show growth for the red cubes. And just for the sake of demonstration, here are some red cubes. Okay. So I believe it's the blue player's turn, and they will buy a red cube. That may not be the most beneficial thing for them to do at the moment, because if there is any growth, the growth will simply be out into the suburbs. So as it's the blue player, we'll swap that round. Blue players first, and we'll take the green cube. No, actually, take back. We'll do that situation here. Blue player will take the blue cube, and then both will buy an office for $5. Okay, placement. Remember, adjacency includes height, so up, above and below. So in this example, we will place our blue building there and our office building here. And for orange, we'll place like that. Okay, growth. So we're a bit more into the growing of our city now, and here we have 2 red offices. Even though they're 1 unit, there are 2 cubes next to 1 cube of green in 2 different locations. So both of those green buildings will grow, and they can either grow out or they can grow up, which is the more sensible thing to do. And then blue does not grow currently because the number of cubes is equal to the number of units, even though there is more cubes in these units than here. There is a slightly different growth rule, if you remember, for the offices versus the commercial. And the orange player then, we will grow this cube, and the purple cube are adjacent to this green, which will mean that cube will grow, and then we will generate 1 unit. So we've moved from 3 separate units into 1 big 4 cube unit, and we still don't get any growth here because we only have 2 cubes and 2 units. Scoring income's the same, so I think it was 5 for each. No, scoring is different, isn't it? So we get 1 each for the city hall. We get 3 for orange. But then blue has an interesting situation. We have 3 here. We have an additional 1 here. However, we now have a size 1, height 2 building. So that is going to score 3. So we have 3, 4, 7 for blue in income. Okay, I think that's where we'll stop. If we were to stop here, and this was the highest our city was to get, which it wouldn't be, but if it was to stop, currently orange would not score any points because none of this is powered. However, blue would score 2 height, 2 cubes, 4 points for that building, 4 points for that building, and an additional 1 point for that building.
Wow, town centre. Never have I known a game look so much like a toddler's building toy be so much a brain-burny puzzle. What a wonderful game. It's designed by Alban Viard, the same designer who created Clinic, which was released to retail earlier this year, and I believe Town Centre was prior to that game, although both of them have been re-released. Town Centre is a 1 to 4 player game, although as you might have noticed, there are certain challenges to playing it with more than just one person, particularly if it's the first time you've tried teaching it. Overall, it's a fantastic game. It's completely addictive. The game is quick enough to want to play multiple times, particularly when you're playing solo. There's even a website-based, not an app, but a website-based game that you can place the solo version of Town Centre. It's fantastic. 10, 15 games in a row, sat waiting for things on the phone. Just fantastic version of it. The game itself is quicker than you might expect, given how complex it is, and right from the very first moment that you play, your brain is engaged. You're thinking about what on earth you're going to do with your city, and it all seems so simple. It just seems, oh well, I'll put this block here and this block there, and then they'll grow, and then you realise you've done something horribly wrong, and you don't know where to put the next block, and this block's not powered, and this block is just entirely in the wrong place, and this block has grown when you didn't want it to, and this next block has done something else, and you've got this living beast of a game that you just have to try and keep hold of till the last rounds, and it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. It's definitely not perfect though. It's got a few issues with it, and most of the issues do revolve around the rules. The official rules are not the most clear, shall we say, and to the point where I was utterly confused by the official rules, and I went onto Board Game Geek and found a, I think, unofficial version, which is much more clear, much more visual, and I found absolutely indispensable. So thank you, whoever created these. By extension, teaching this game can be a difficult task, particularly if you're playing with the 4-player count and more than one person is new. There is something about the spatial side that you just seem to, it defies easy description, and you need to see it being done. And I've known people think the game sounds interesting, start playing, and then just stop because the spatial side is just there's a learning curve. There's definitely a learning curve. The components are generally very good. However, I do wish they had coins of some kind, cardboard coins, even paper money, because that cube that moves up and down the income track, one knock and they're all over the place. And good luck finding out from everyone where their cube actually was prior to it being knocked. But once you do get into the game, it's just great. It's fantastic. It's absolutely wonderful. And I wouldn't hesitate to recommend this enough to anyone who does like something a bit different, something a bit of a brain burner, and of course, if you want to play it solo, it is just phenomenal. Love this one. If you are interested in getting hold of this one, I believe you may be able to order it from the Ludicreations site or from the AV Studios site. Not 100% sure. I got my copy through a prize draw actually at a convention, but it's a wonderful game. Definitely worth a look for people who do like spatial puzzles. I think that's probably going to wrap this one up a bit longer than I would normally go on for. If you do like this, please do subscribe and like and all that sort of stuff, and I will see you next time. Thank you.